Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Covering both sides of the big issues with the analysis you trust on News Radio 1040 WHO.
Here's some stats from the Pew Research Foundation. Gun deaths among U.S. children and teens have risen 50% in 2 years. Now, a majority of adult gun deaths are by suicide, but children's and teens killed by gunfire are more likely to die by homicide. Let's talk this over with an attorney that focuses on gun law cases. You've heard him plenty of times on this show. Edwin Taylor, back on the Davidson Family Dentistry Newsmaker line. Ed, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
You know, when I see these stats, Edwin, I think about this, that often when you see a story about a kid with a gun, we then say, well, that kid shouldn't have had a gun according to existing gun laws. So I guess the question is, how are the kids getting these guns?
Well, the older kids, which the CDC numbers include, which is actually kind of misleading about the Pew study, the older kids are getting them usually through illegal transfers of stolen firearms. So, number one, the original person who accessed the firearm committed a crime, and then the person who then subsequently transferred that firearm to the child or the person who used it was committing another crime. And then, of course, the actual use of the firearm to commit an aggravated robbery, aggravated sexual assault, or murder then commits a crime on top of that. So by the time an individual uses a gun in a crime, there's usually three to five other crimes that were committed in the chain of that ultimate use. So, but what I wanted to point out also, I want to give a little context to those Pew numbers, is that they say, of course, the gun deaths rose 50%, which is obviously an alarming number. But, you know, as Mark Twain popularized, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. When you look at the actual physical raw number, the number is the difference between the number of deaths in 2019 and the number of deaths in 2021 is 858. So we're dealing with an additional 858 individuals. Now, while obviously somebody who loses their life due to a firearm is a tragedy, and we want to obviously empathize with the people who are affected by those individual tragedies, as a number in context, it's not, you know, as alarming as the Pew Research Center would like us to believe. In addition, one thing where they are, I believe, kind of intentionally misleading is that they get these numbers from the CDC. The CDC does not break down their numbers of children versus adults. The CDC breaks down their numbers in age groups of 5 years. So we have an age group from 0 to 4, from 5 to 9, from 10 to 14, and then most importantly, for purposes of this study, 15 to 19. It's that 15 to 19 group where we see the dramatic increase, or the increase in these numbers. Also, I think we would all agree that an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old is an adult and should not be included in the same statistic base where we see actual children, you know, those, of course, children 17 years and younger.
So, and that's all good, Edwin. I mean, I appreciate you putting it in context, because sure, if you're like Pew Research, you're going to lead with whatever stat will get people to pay attention to your study. So it's good to have the actual facts on all of this, the actual numbers. And, you know, in this emotion-driven debate, there's a lot of talk now in the legal world about holding a whole bunch of people responsible for kids getting guns, including a recent decision in I think it was Michigan, that said, well, the parents can be held liable if the kid's doing a bad thing with a gun. As a gun law expert, that's got to be a disturbing trend to you, isn't it?
Well, there are states, and so this is how legislators have attacked the subject, which I don't disagree with, is that there are pretty much every state. If there's a state that does not have one of these laws, they are an outlier. Every state, including my home state of Texas, which has had one of these laws for well over 2 decades, there's a law that imposes a criminal penalty on a parent or any adult that recklessly allows a child, which Texas defines a child as someone under the age of 17, that recklessly allows a child to access a firearm, there's a criminal penalty just for that. And then there's a harsher criminal penalty. In fact, there's a movement here in the state of Texas to actually make this a felony offense. There's a harsher criminal penalty in the event that that child then subsequently uses it to injure, either injure or kill somebody, whether it's done through an accident or an act of intentional violence. So states have addressed this, and yes, if we truly want, obviously there's very little we can do about being the victim of crime and having our firearms stolen from us, but that is an exception to the law. But as far as recklessly allowing children to access firearms, it means you have to lock them up, you have to put them away, you have to make them inaccessible. In the event a child does get that, that's a crime. In the event that child then subsequently uses it to injure another person, either a child or an adult, then that is a separate crime with a separate criminal penalty.
He is an attorney that focuses on gun law cases. He's Edwin Taylor. Ed, thanks very much for joining me today.